First go over XAMPP, getting a test database created in MySQL. For this week, you've got the practice lab, which I want to go over, which is creating the guest book, and then your homework. So the first one is XAMPP. When you go to your local host, there's a phpMyAdmin. You click on that, it'll bring you to this screen, and we're going to go ahead and create a user and a database for the user. For this example, I'm going to create a database, user and database called test, but you can create one with your first initial last name as an example. You click on privileges tab, add a new user. For the username, you're going to put in test. Change the any-host to local, password test, and then retype a test again. On the database for user, you want to grant all privileges on wildcard. Create database with same name and grant all privileges when we want. And then check all on the global privileges. Click go. And what's just happened is the test database has now been created. When you click on your home button, it'll show you all the databases in yours. And you should only have the one you just created, which is going to be test. Or if you create one with your first initial last name, it'll be there as well. Click on privileges. This will give you all the users that have rights to that database. In this case, here's the test user, has all privileges to the database, along with the root user, Web290, and Chucon. These are on my computer. So you should have test, localhost for test user all privileges. So then we can go and there is a download file for this example here, which is a my contact database, my guest book. I'll go ahead and type in an example. First name test, last name user, tuser@aol.com. Add the contact. Here's the new contact that was added. You click the edit link, it takes you to a screen to edit those fields. Submit, has a wait screen, and then goes back to the updated data grid. So that's what we're going to look at. But the first thing before we could do any of this is we had to have a database to work with and a user in phpMyAdmin. Which if you've went through this, you already have one. Your username is going to also have a database with the same name and full privileges. So let's go ahead and go to the code for this example. The first file needed for a database PHP app is a config file. I want to show you the folder structure I've got on my XAMPP directory so you can see where it's coming from. Here's my XAMPP htdocs, Web290. There's a config file. And then the folder where I actually host the lab for week 3 is in this labs folder. And it's week 3. 4 files: contact, edit, index, and update. And just remember that the config file is located here in the root of Web290. Also, I have one in the root of the labs folder. In PHP, the config file consists of configuration for your MySQL database. Starts with your PHP tag and PHP tag. You have your connection parameter. Have some variables here for DB host, DB name, username, password. DB host for development is always going to be localhost. And then the DB name, the one I just created, is test. Username, test. Password, test. And then the DB connection, MySQL Connect. This is a built-in SQL string connection reserved word. And we're going to use the DB host, which is localhost, test for username, test for password. Then a connection string, MySQL select. It's going to select the database test. And then MySQL connect. Here is going to actually connect to the database on this line. And then making sure the database that you've selected is active is again using the MySQL database select. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And you'll notice the path for this one is in the root of Web290. Now, on all of our websites, the beginning file is always going to be index. You'll notice on the index.php file, there is a directory back 1 folder to config.php, which would actually be in the labs folder, this one here, located in the labs folder. So I'm going to go ahead and update that one. That one. So in the index.php, we've got basic HTML to make up the form, and that's what the user's viewing here. Basic my guestbook, first name, last name, email, a button, and then a data grid table. So I have my guestbook, and then here's the form tag, and it has in there, before we get to the PHP information, first name, last name, email. There's the button for submit with the label add contact. So let's go ahead and start with the form action. The form action, we've named this form people. The action is it's going to go to the contact.php page by using a post method. So after the user clicks a button, that's a post firing mechanism to go to the contact.php. It's got a 1-inch border, 400 width pixel. The first name has an input type text, name fname, size 43. Next is last name, text name on that field is lname 43. Email text as well, email is the name, size 43. Submit button with the label contact, add contact. So that comprises of the PH or the HTML portion of the page. Now we'll get into the include statement. Include in PHP is we're actually including this file into the PHP file, this external config.php, which is what we just went over here, which is a connection file always needed for all database related apps in PHP. So when we actually include the config.php file, we are actually, it's as if this config.php code is placed here by this one line. So modularization is easily brought in because of the include statement. We can have multiple includes within one PHP file. So after the include statement, we're going to see if the people table exists. If it doesn't, it's going to be created. So we're going to have a variable called check. It's going to be a query, MySQL query, select all from people, and this is going to declare whether it has been created and has at least one record. The if statement here is going to check to see if it is created. If it is, it's not going to do anything here. It's commented out. Query was legal and the table exists. Else, something's wrong or the table has not been created. We're going to do a query string for a creation of a table. Create table people. People ID. It's an integer with 11 characters available. Not null. Auto increment. What that means is every record that's created is going to start with initially record 1, then 2, then 3, so on and so forth. It's going to be auto incremented by 1, and it cannot be null. This field here is going to actually automatically be populated when you do a creation of a record. The next one is fname, people underscore fname, a varchar 32. Varchar is alphanumeric symbol content. It also cannot be null. Lname, people lname, varchar 32, not null. People email, varchar 32, not null. And the primary key of this table is people ID, which is the auto increment key. This query is being fired here by the MySQL peoples. So after it's been created, if it needs to be created, which it will the first time you run it, it's going to do select all and then result in that. Initially there's not going to be anything show up because nothing's been written. And then it's going to always do a MySQL close. You need to always do a close after you've done an open or a query. The next few lines actually populates the below table with content. Now the below table is this table down here. So it echoes out the table using PHP echo statements, which we went over a little bit last week. You'll notice it's echoing HTML code on each line to display to the browser. And then it does a while loop here using MySQL explosion array called MySQL fetch array, which explodes the result query, and this while statement actually takes place from here to here, and it's going to loop through each record and populate each row one at a time. And so the first row or first record example would be fname, lname, and email. It also throws in here, we throw in here a hyper reference to the edit.php, which is doing a reference by URL to that unique row, and it has in there the link edit. That's where you're actually getting these links here on this row. You'll notice when I put my mouse over these links at the bottom of the browser, it shows this first one is ID 1, second ID 2, so on and so forth. And we'll see that in just a second as we go further. So that's that file, index.php. Now let's go to the next, which is a contact.php file. When the user clicks on submit, That's basically after they filled in a form up here at the top and they hit add contact, it's going to go to the contact form, which is this one right here. You'll notice the contact form also has an include statement to the database configuration file because it's going to be connected to the database. Here we have an update DB local variable, has a SQL insert statement, insert into people, people F name, people L name, people email, and then the values it's going to put in there is a post value, because you remember it's a post method going to contact. So the post value is, the first one is a post value F name, then L name, then email. You'll notice the fields are separated by dot operators before and after with double quotes. Let me go back to the first page here and show you where it's getting the F name, where it's getting the field statements at. So the post F name, post L name, post email is coming from the actual name of the fields in the table. F name, L name, and email. That's where they're coming from. So all this page is actually doing is inserting whatever the users have typed in, these three fields, into the people database. After it fires that update here, and what this line is doing is firing the MySQL update query. If it fails for whatever reason, then we'll get an error on the screen. It might be a database fail, syntax failure. But once this is successful, it's going to do what's called a header location index.php. What this is going to do is redirect back to the index.php, back to this file once it's completed. So I'll fill out another example here. As soon as I hit add contact, remember it's going to the contact.php file. Here it says the test people doesn't exist because we've not yet loaded it. So let me go ahead and refresh this page. Notice when I refresh the page, I now have no records here because none's been added yet. I'm going to leave my field names in here that I have it. Hit add contact. And you'll note immediately the contact was added and the data grid had one record added to it. Next we'll go to this information, which is the edit link. You'll notice the edit link in the index.php file goes to the edit.php page with a reference ID, whatever row people ID that they're on currently. So let's go to that one. So on this page, we're including the config.php again for database connectivity. Here we're getting the ID from the index page, or from the URL, I'm sorry, from the index page. So if you'll notice here, remember anytime a question mark is after PHP, here's the actual variable name ID equals whatever row they're on in the record. So let me go to my browser again to show you that. I'll put my mouse over the edit link for record 1. You'll notice at the bottom of the status bar, at the bottom of the browser, it says edit.php question mark ID equals 1. ID equals 1 is record 1. And so on the edit.php page, this get statement would actually be pulling in ID 1 into the ID variable. Then it's going to ask a database for information about the links table. Here it's select all from people, where people ID is the ID variable, which is going to be ID1, number 1. Then it's going to do a MySQL query, selecting all people where people ID is 1. Then the fetch array, which is exploding the array row by row into this num variable. And so it's going to get all the fields needed. Then it's going to kick it out into a form. And you'll notice in the form, it has a heading called edit post. The form is a post method going to update.php. It has a hidden field for the ID with the value of whatever record they're on currently for people ID, which is going to be 1 in this case. We have first name. It's a text input. F name is the name, and then the value, you'll notice, is being echoed here from the variable num, which is a MySQL fetch array explosion of the result. So we have F name, people L name, and those two fields are going to be populated in the edit link. So we have F name, L name, and then finally email, which is right here. And then there's a submit button. And so now when the users do make a change and hit submit, this time it's going to go to the update.php. And now let's look at that one. The update.php also has, as always, the include statement to the config.php file for database connectivity. Now we're bringing in 4 post values, one for the ID field, whatever it might be coming over, F name, L name, and email. And remember, from that edit page, the statements on the update.php file, ID, F name, L name, and email, are coming from the names of the fields. So here we have F name, L name, email, and also ID, this hidden field ID, brought over to the update.php file. So let's look at that one. So after the 4 values are brought over with a post information, another SQL variable, and here's a SQL query. So far we've done create table, insert record into table. Now we're doing update record of a table. Update people, we're going to set people F name to whatever they brought over for F name. And you'll notice on the update set people F name, immediately after the equal symbol is the actual contents of what you're wanting to change it to. People L name, there's the L name variable. People email, the email variable, where people ID is equal to ID that's brought over. Then it's going to fire that result with a MySQL query. Then here we're going to do what's called a header refresh. It's going to refresh in 4 seconds and redirect to index.php. While it's waiting, a display of updating complete, please wait will happen. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to hit submit. Here's my update complete, please wait, and in a few seconds here, in fact 4 seconds, it's going to redirect back to the page with that changed information. So to recap, first thing you do when you create a PHP database application is you've got to create a username and database in MySQL. In this case, we created one called test. You just do that by clicking on privileges, add new user, type in the username, make sure the host is localhost, password field twice, create database with same name and grant on privileges, check all on global privileges, and then click go. That should give you a new user with a new database that has all privileges to that database. So that's step one. Step two is you're going to have to create an index page for configuration file. And the index page is called config.php. Config.php has all the database connectivity information, host, database, username, password, database connection string, and database selection string. Within each one of the pages, you're also calling or inputting that file throughout using the include statement. Include statements are on the index page, also on the contacts page, edit page, and update page. So the index page is used to actually initialize and create the table people if it's not already created. Once it's created, then when a user actually types in information in the bottom grid, which if you remember, it's in this page here, the type information here. Click add contact. As soon as they hit the add button, it's going to go and post to the contact.php page. Contact.php page is going to insert a brand new record into people. You'll notice in this insert ID is not included because it's an auto increment field. But we have people F name, people L name, and people email being added by those post values, F name, L name, and email. And F name, L name, and email are actually in the names of the fields in the HTML table. Next, once they come back to index, it's going to have an edit link at the end of every one of the records, which is going to redirect, do a post redirect back to the next table, which in this case, the table on this one, go up to the top here. Is edit.php. It's going to go to the edit.php file with the ID reference. From that, it's going to load into the database data grid the first name, last name, and email. The user is going to be able to edit it. Once they edit whatever fields they want to edit, click the submit button. Then it's going to post to the update.php file. The update.php file is going to take the information from the post ID through email, do an update, refresh 4 seconds back to index, and then finally the update is complete. So here's your final My Guest Book. This one's going to be used throughout your PHP applications a lot, whether it be a contact information, a guest book information, inquiry on the website. So this is actually used quite a bit. So I definitely encourage you to do this exercise more than once to get the hang of it. both on creation of your database in PHPMyAdmin, username and database, all the way through completion of my guest book on creating the table, inserting information, editing information to complete the exercise. So that's the lab for this week, practice lab. The homework, you'll do reading here on your PHP control structures. I have an example here on that one at the bottom on number 5. The example looks like this. It has a while loop that goes from the number 2 to 100 and a for loop that goes from 1 to 99. Let's look at that code. Pretty simple code on this one. You've got basic HTML tags here. Then the PHP portion of it. Here's the while loop. Declare A with a value of 2. While A is less than or equal to 100, you're going to echo A. It's going to increment A by 2. So you're going to start with 2, then go to 4, 6, all the way through 100. Next, on the for loop's a little different than while loop. You'll notice while starts with a statement, has a left and right bracket, and then the contents in the middle. PHP for the for loop, for A equals 1, so A is going to be 1 initially. While A is less than or equal to 100, A is going to be incremented by 2. So this one starts with 1, goes to 100, incremented by 2. So it's going to be 1, 3, 5, 7, all the way through 100. Here's your echo statement. This case in the echo statement, you just have one line because the increment value is actually an initialized line here on the for loop. So again, while loop and for loop. Once that's finished, the finished example looks like this. While loop 2 all the way through 100, and while loop 1 all the way through 99. This is the one you'll actually submit externally once you're finished. Make sure and save your file as an index.php file, as it is here. So when I do go to your week 3 for your project, it'll go right to the page without having to type in the file name. So again, make sure and name it index.php, and that should solve any problems. If you have any questions, you can email me as always, but definitely recommend doing both in-class lab or practice lab and then also your homework.